Hi everyone, I'm back with another video. Is on camera lenses and different types of lenses that are used in film, photography, and what the purpose of them is. So I'll be getting into more. So film lenses, they could be known as cine lenses or cine lens. So they are high-end lenses that are used for cinema cameras and video camcorders, film, like people like filmmakers and cinematographers and videographers used to create their films and digital projects. They could be similar to DSLR cameras and photography lenses, and they have glass plates that are installed, that are fitted to bring exterior light through the camera's viewfinder to a film strip or a digital sense, because the light goes through the lens. So basically it bounces, it's basically a reflector, and it projects light and you'll be able to see, that's how you view the subject. So there are different characteristics regarding the use of, in terms of the film lens. So there's a focal length, which is the distance between the camera lens and the camera's digital sense. So that allows the image to be recorded, and it's how the human eye can see the size of an object. So it's similar to how we see objects now. And there's different views on how, it depends on the angle as well. So having a larger focal length is narrower view, so it shows less of the scene, compared to a smaller focal length, which has an opposite effect. T-stops, so it's the amount of light that passes through the lens, which is measured in increments, or you could call transmission stops, or T-stops for short, as I've been saying, and is more accurate than measuring through f-stops, which is the camera setting when you set the aperture for the lens, and is usually used in still photography. And aperture itself is the size of the opening of the lens or iris, so it affects how the image is captured. So larger apertures create a shallow depth of field, while the smaller ones create a greater depth of field. So it's more in focus, basically. So I'll show you different images of what it looks like. So the bigger the lens, the aperture, the less light that it goes through. More light can go in. So the main camera lens is used both in photography and cinematography. The prime lens and a zoom lens are both, they could be considered similar because they're both used in both cinematography and photography, but I'll tell you the difference, or you can read it for yourself, but I will explain the difference. So filmmakers use the prime lens, and often than the zoom one. And in terms of that, the prime lens has a fixed focal length, so you have to move the camera physically closer towards or away from the subject to change the view angle. And this type of lens is also known as a varifocal lens, meaning the focus changes, it zooms. Because if you zoom in with that lens, there's a limited amount you can do. You can't really do a lot, so you might have to switch lens depending on which camera you have. And it's much lighter than a zoom lens, but it does restrict, as I mentioned, the creative control in terms of the amount of zooming you can do. You're just limited, basically. And as I'm speaking of now, I'm saying that the zoom lens allows cinematographers to change the focal length and the angle of viewing by zooming in and out towards the subject. So it's done by a zoom ring, and it gives you the flexibility of how close you allow the subject to be without ever losing the focus. You could do an extreme wide or an extreme close up. So it's greater flexibility, basically. I wouldn't say no restriction, but it's less restrictive. So you're more likely to do more. And it's known as a parfocal lens, which is a cine zoom lens, which is another name, basically, of the same thing. So, as I said, you don't lose the quality of the image, and the focus is very sharp. So these are the lenses, and they all look pretty different, but you can see the first lens is a prime lens, and so this other two this second one in the bottom is a prime lens as well. The zoom lens, which is the last image, is much bigger than the prime lens, and you can see the difference in terms of image. Sorry, let me go back for a sec. So you can see the difference, and same with this subject here as well. So the kit lens, so it changes the aperture completely depending on what you use it for. The zoom lens, the prime lens tends to lose focus once a certain, so that means you have to change your position when you use a prime lens, compared to a cine zoom lens, which allows freedom and you don't need to change your position too much. And here you can see the difference here as well. So there's 4 types of lenses used in filmmaking. So the 50mm lens, or Nifty 50 as it's known, is a prime lens that it just represents how the human eye sees different images and objects in a natural setting or so. So they're very affordable, they're lightweight, and is used a lot in handheld filming basically, because a lot of filmmakers who are first timers should be using this lens ideally, and should use, so they know how to handle a camera and how to practice. It's like basically practice before you can move on to advanced lenses and cameras. I would say start as a DSLR camera ideally, somewhat in that vein, so you know what you're doing with a camera. And also another tip is to use a gimbal or stabilizer for greater image stabilization if you're not very good with handheld filming basically. So this lens can create a very nice bokeh effect, which is soft, attractive out of focus background with maximum aperture. So you just set up the aperture, then it gives you that image. So I think I've made a video about something similar. So there's a video that I've got about that exact lens on here. So you see the subject is out of focus because that lens doesn't give you what you restricts the viewing basically, and it's small, and this happens all the time, basically. So you have to change your position, movement as well. So anamorphic lenses, so filmmakers do tend to favour this sort of lens for its wide ratio and the ability to produce high quality images. So they do have a great, they do generate a wide view frame, field of view. So that means it covers a lot in the frame, basically. But it can have distortion, a slight distortion, and plenty of warmth in the frame. So that frame is, a lot of filmmakers prefer it, and the quality of image is second to none, and allows, lots of filmmakers do use it very much often. So, and you see a lot of films that are shot in that way, lots of famous films that you see in the cinema and stuff. So I have an image here. So a 4K. So you can shoot in 4K with this lens, basically, because that's basically what it does. There's cameras like Blackmagic, I would say, that uses 4K as a film. 4K is 1440 pixels, which is pretty high. And there's 8K now, so yeah. So the telephoto lens, which is known as the 75mm lens or long lens, it's a zoom lens with multiple focal points, allowing for long distance filming to happen. So you can get shots from a long way away in one location. So it's done by compression and the magnification of an image, enabling every detail part of the image to be seen in detail. So it's less frequently used because a lot of cameras, you can still achieve that effect anyway. So it does save a lot of time and money. It's mainly used in documentaries and extensive film shoots and locations, depending how large the set is, ideally. So I'm going to show you now. So basically, you can actually download apps that have this lens instead of actually going to get a camera that has a 75mm lens. It's used in old films and stuff. Gives a retro feel to it, which looks pretty nice and fascinating. And you could see that it represents the actual lens. It's actually the person is shooting long distance, but it does look like they were in a closer proximity of that scene. So a wide angle lens is a prime lens that has a focal point between 14 to 20 millimeters. It's ideal for large objects, hence it's called wide angle, and you can shoot landscapes of different scenes and stuff. And it draws the attention to the object's foreground. And you can see like wider images. You can see everything that's in the location, the surrounding areas. And you can see a lot of movement and the scope of the image. Gives you a sense of capture. It does be warned that it does make the image much smaller and distorts the size of the image itself, because it gives like a fisheye effect, basically. So the focal length is much larger than the camera's sensor size, which is why the fisheye effect is, you get that fisheye effect. So I will show you now what it looks like. So you can see now that it is actually distorting the image. So basically the whole scene, the whole town of the frame is fitted and you can see everything. But it's very distant because people do look like ants from afar. And you can't see a lot of things. You can see movement, but it's not a lot to see. You can just see the landscape itself. You can see the animals, the birds as well. So, Cine versus still lens. So, there are key differences between those lenses and what they're used for. We know a cine lens is used in cinematography, and a still lens is a photography lens, basically. So the aperture and iris has the ability to manually adjust its functions, including aperture and iris, with rings that are built into the lens body. The iris rings have T-stops markings, which allows for accurate measure of light that enters the lens, while the aperture rings allows for smoother exposure. Focus, there's another different. They're both different in terms of focus. The still lens adjusts the focus electronically, while you have to manually adjust the focus with a cine lens because of the zoom rings. The focus rings that you have when you are adjusting the cameras next to like the zoom. The zoom one's the bigger frame, the focus one's the smaller one when you rotate it. So it allows for a smoother focal pull. So that's why focus rings are used, to allow yourself to adjust the focus and gives you a clearer an idea of what to focus on. It's best to manually focus when you use a cine lens, because automatically an auto focus doesn't always achieve what you want. So manually focus, you zoom into a subject that you're focusing on, and then you do it until you can't zoom in anymore. Then you press the manual focus and you pull out. I will give you tutorials in. I've been saying about it, but I haven't done any masterclasses yet. But I will do so in future. So the optical performance allows for the consistent quality of an image. That's for a cine lens, which is better than a still lens in terms of that. And in difficult lighting conditions, a cine lens performs better and shoots better quality images. And there's instant. You can do it in very dark lighting conditions, and it has a stronger sense of quality, basically. But it has few instances of chronic aberration, mismatched colours, and vignetting, which is when the corners of the image have reduced saturation. That means the file is raw. You can shoot raw, but you need to go and see a colorist once the editing process starts. But I think it saves more time if you use a cine lens, if you shoot it without worrying about how raw the file is. People do prefer to shoot raw because I think it allows the SD card to hold more space, and the file will be smaller and it's compressed. And the size of the cine lens has a larger and heavier. It's much larger and heavier than a still lens. So they allow cinematographers a variety of cameras, adapters and accessories, which allows a smoother shift in focus, resulting in images having great quality. The zoom ring in the cine lens creates a smoother zoom in movement compared to a still lens. So filmmakers can zoom in and out, but I don't really prefer using the zoom ring. There's a feature that you use, but you have to be very good with it. If you're a very good cinematographer and you know how to zoom in, you do it very slowly, like slowly zoom into the subject and maintaining the focus of that subject. And and you can see the difference with those still and as the cine lens, still lens. See the difference in that. The classic lens does make the image look grainy, and the image has a washed out effect compared to this one. And so you can see the same difference here. So that's it for this video. If you learned anything and you really liked this video, please like, share and subscribe. I had to do this video again because I had to take the video down for copyright reasons, and I'm remaking this for your own educational purposes only. And if you really do enjoy, please subscribe and suggest any thoughts or videos you can do, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.